Oh, yeah. Cuse is in the house. 10 seed, Dayton. Back-to-back games against Dayton in the NCAA tournament. Hey, you got to love it, though. The Cuse is in the house. I'm Jim Sinicropi, special edition of the Upstate Orange podcast here. Special Selection Sunday edition. I got Brad Conner, the professor, holding on the line. I got Kevin Korzeniewski in studio. We're going to talk about the brackets. We're going to talk about the Cuse, who's involved. Much different tone for tonight's show than it would have been had we not made the tournament after being on the bubble. And I don't know about any of you, Cuse Nation, but every time we've ever been on the bubble, we always don't get in. So I don't even know what to think. But I thought we were going in, and we were. So, Brad, what's your reaction to the 10 seed, your instant reaction?
Instant reaction is I'm pumped. How can you, as a Syracuse fan, not be happy about that? This was a team that was on the outside looking in. We're watching all the results this weekend, wondering if anybody's on the bubble and then off, or off the bubble and or outside the tournament and then in. And this team was written off for dead after the Pitt game, and now all of a sudden we're in the tournament. How could you not be excited about that? Yeah,
it is exciting. It's a second lease on life, and as I mentioned before, in studio, Kevin Korzeniewski, Korzy, not a big Cuse fan, so he might bring some levity to the conversation in here, but a regular guest of our Selection Sunday special. Welcome in studio.
Thanks for having me down again for the selection. You know, it's either sit home and watch it or come down and spout off about it. And I'm happy Cuse is in, Jim. I really am. You know, I'm a Duke fan, but because, you know, I was born in Syracuse, I live around the area. I watched a lot of Cuse games this year. Really glad for them to be in. It just encourages all the college basketball fans in the area to be happy about it. So it's good for me in the tournament because college basketball is my passion. It's the one thing in my life that I love, and I've been watching the selection show since I was 14. I was telling my 11-year-old son tonight, I used to sit down and make my own little brackets. You know, you couldn't just go on the internet and print them out.
Yeah, that's right.
I said I used to have to draw out all 64 teams, and I would do it. I'd draw it out during the day. I did that through college, you know, and I just love this time of year. But happy for the Cuse. You know, if they weren't in, I wouldn't have been surprised. If they were in, I'm not surprised. But the 10 seed is shocking. I mean,
you thought they'd be at 12?
Yeah, I thought they'd be in one. Yeah. You know, I mean, you want them in, you want them out. I thought they'd be at least playing 12, maybe the 11 playing. But the 10. But when I saw the things come out, and I didn't, you know, the one thing that Brad, I don't know if you saw, but I know Jim did because we were texting. But the brackets leaked. Somebody sent me the brackets after the first two brackets came out.
Leaked brackets, yeah.
You know, but I'm watching it and I'm going, you know, geez, Cincy, look at Cincy where they're at, and USC where they're at, and these guys got high seeds with 19 wins, you know, and I'm thinking, man, Syracuse had a shot. They you know, they went power conferences. That's what they did, and you know, I don't like that. I'm not a fan of the average power conferences in, but that's what the committee went with this year for whatever reason. I listened to two interviews already with Joe Castiglione, the chair, and I think him and his band of jackasses were drunk today. But a lot of sketchy things going on. You know, not sketchy, I shouldn't say sketchy, but just a lot of curious things. So anyway, happy for the Cuse. Yep. Surprised with their 10 seed.
Of course, you talked about the leaked brackets, and I saw the same thing. I was following the reveal on Twitter and saw that, and you wonder if there was, you know, you're skeptical when you see it, and I wanted to believe it, but seeing Syracuse as a 10 made me skeptical, quite frankly.
Then it started matching up.
If this team was going to get in, they were going to get in as in the play-in game, and to see them as a 10 seed, you know, it gave me pause. Like, well, maybe this isn't legit. Maybe we're going to have to see this play out on TV before I believe it. Yeah,
you know, and that leaked bracket came out, and I'm looking at them like, holy cow. This is real. You know, this bracket, this got leaked on Twitter. It's, you know, a friend of mine sent it to me. I said, this is holy, look, it's panning out. So I started looking through, and I was just disappointed in the low to mid majors. I'm a big fan of the George Mason runs. A couple years ago, Dayton had an awesome run, and they played Syracuse. We were just talking about it. And, you know, you're not going to see that many teams do that this year because there's just not that many teams like that in. It's
like
all
St. Bonaventure was the one I thought.
Yeah, I thought St. Bonaventure could have been.
They're 29 RPI.
Yeah,
got to feel safe if you're 29 RPI.
St. Mary's. I've been a big fan of Monmouth all year. Now, if Monmouth was in the ACC, would they have the same record as Syracuse? Probably not. You know, just the eye test of seeing both those teams live this year, Syracuse is better. But what is Monmouth to do? I mean,
They had 7 losses. They have to have 4 losses or 5 losses.
But I disagree. When they played one home game out of conference, one home game out of conference.
That's the only thing that hurts.
And they have to schedule these games 3 years in advance to play. They can't. They're not calling people tonight saying, "Hey, Syracuse, will you play us next year?" Syracuse is no. They're not going to play Monmouth. They got to get these teams so far in advance. So normally, over the last 5 to 7 years, probably more, the committee has rewarded that. This year, they went with chalk. They went with power conference, and that's a decision that we'll go on with, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, hey, as far as Syracuse goes, let's real quick just recall that game, the first round of the ACC tournament, where, and this is the thing too, Syracuse is going to get in or out of the tournament based on whether they win or lose that game, and it's a 1-point game. It's tough. And looking back to, like, we won the Battle for Atlantis. I think there was 5 tournament teams in that field. So, and the St. Bonaventure win. We had wins against teams in this field like UConn, Texas A&M, at Duke. So I felt comfortable going into it, and I'm glad I wasn't, because I felt comfortable too when we were, I think, 21 and 10, and a 19 and 12 Stanford team got in instead of us.
Yeah, once you start seeing those other teams get in, it starts to make you feel a little comfort. Boeheim was on there, and he said, I saw a couple teams get in, and all of a sudden my stomach settled down, and I felt a little better about where we were. And
somebody should have showed him the leaked bracket.
Yes. I wonder if he didn't bring that up and why it was leaked. And CBS went to a new format this year with a 2-hour show, and they took their time announcing it. And I wonder if somebody got mad and said,
I got mad.
Yeah, I got mad too. Just announce it, and then break it down after. But they want ratings. It's always about money. Everything's about money.
They're hurting the product, though, in the end. That nobody wants to sit there for 2 hours. And, more and more people will just say, you know what, I'll just check out online like 2 hours from now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here. 2 hours is too long for something
terrible
like that.
Too. Did you watch it with Barkley
with
a touch screen?
Watch Charles Barkley, who knows not a thing about college basketball, talk about teams he had never even heard of.
CBS just puts out the worst production ever for this. I just wish ESPN had it.
And the worst is that they're previewing brackets that they haven't announced yet. That's all anybody's been doing for the past, 2 weeks is talking about who's in, who's out, and they're still doing it during the selection show. The selection show means give us the brackets and get out of here so we can get going, so we can start filling them out.
Yeah, that was a poor decision, and it's got to be, that thing got leaked, according to Twitter, like an hour before the selection show. And John Calipari, I don't know if you saw him get on there. He went nuts, not about the leak, but about them being a 4 seed over Texas A&M, who they just beat yesterday. He goes, obviously that bracket was done yesterday. He goes, so I hate the committee and I hate the chairman of SEC who's making us play on Sunday. And oh, by the way, now we got to go play Thursday. I don't like the way he goes about his complaining, but geez, he's got some great points.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't understand why any conference tournament would want to hold it over till Sunday.
Especially, and it shows the way today that the committee's making their picks early this morning or late last night, because how does Kentucky beat A&M handily today and get a lower seed? Yeah,
with all those things being pretty equal. Yeah, it's always been a big mystery, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So Brad, in that Pittsburgh game at the ACC tournament, we got our wish. They benched Cooney. They played Frank Howard, and I thought things looked pretty good.
They had I think a better set of matchups to battle Pitt, and I think they get stagnant when Cooney's in the game, and you see it. And Frank Howard was penetrating. He's getting in the lane. He was dishing to open guys. He's drawing the defense. And that's been a missing link with this team for a long time. They pass around the perimeter, they wait for an open shot. If Malachi Richardson is getting into the lane, that changes the dynamic. But to the extent that that's not happening, Frank Howard can be that guy. Without Cooney in the game, I think that was what we were saying. If they can limit Cooney's touches, they've got a chance. And the second half, they did that until, unfortunately, the very last 5 seconds.
Yeah, and Frank Howard when he was in there, 5 assists, 2 turnovers, and
one bad turnover. And
the worst turnover of the year. Yeah.
Him not playing at the very tail end.
Doesn't hurt so bad thinking about it now, though.
It doesn't matter, but watching it, and I was rooting for Syracuse in that game because I'd certainly rather see Syracuse in the tournament over Pitt, but really didn't matter. at hindsight. But Howard's the guy. First of all, you set a screen. I understand that Benajay's double teamed, but set a screen for him at least, okay?
Yeah.
Plan B is to go to Cooney, and I know he's mad at Howard, but isn't that why Howard plays? Because he's a playmaker? You're only down one. You're down 3, Cooney's got to be in the game. You're down 1. You need your most athletic, best ball handler, playmaker to do exactly what he's supposed to do, and that's make a play.
Yeah, and the other thing is, well, give it to your fifth-year senior, right? But your fifth-year senior pulled up for 3 with 2.5 seconds left in a clear lane to the basket, and the whole season on the line.
Well, if your fifth-year senior better get his head out of his butt, or it's going to be a quick tournament showing.
Well, he's got one thing on his mind, and that's to shoot a 3-pointer. It's what he does. It's what he's kind of always done. And in the open floor, he's much more content shooting a 3 than he is trying to get to the basket.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that he was a defensive liability. I thought, what ultimately had him come out of the game is they kept hitting open jump shots on his side of the zone with him late getting there with no reason too. If you look at the way the set is, he's so far off and he's not really doing anything, and then he's late to get to the shooter. I mean, how many times in a row? Andy Routens, for example, was another fifth-year senior who was fantastic in the zone that got out on shooters. You see Boeheim pull freshman and sophomore for not doing it, and I'm glad he finally pulled Cooney for it, and I'm assuming that's why he pulled him. Either that or he got sick of having somebody on his team take 40% of the team's shots and shoot 20%.
It's hard, Cooney's he's relied on him for all these years, but you take him out of the game, you go on a 12-2 run. I can't remember what the numbers
12-1 run.
12-1 run without him. And then Howard makes that one mistake, and it's like, Howard got you there. But it's really hard for a coach to go back and say, well, I'm gonna, you got to go with a guy that you're.
I was shocked he did it at this point in the season.
And he said he went back and said he should have never had Howard in to make that first turnover.
Right.
And I disagreed, but it's easy for us to judge.
Just like a lot of times this year, they get down, they press, they come back, and when they get close, he pulls it back. Yeah. And you're on a 12-1 run. Just do exactly what you're doing. Don't change anything.
Well, I think that was part of the reason they had Frank Howard in the first place. They needed to go high tempo. They needed to get steals. They needed to get turnovers. They had to go the full court. And Trevor Cooney, there's no way he would have no business trying to press in the full court. And we've seen that a couple times over the course of the last year or two, and he's just not well suited for that at all. And so Frank Howard could be that guy. And then they had they had it close, and Boeheim thought he could control the clock, and he put the guy in there that he wanted to have in there in the end. Which the unfortunate irony, 2 things I thought about. One, if Frank Howard had been in the game, he'd have gotten to the basket. Probably could have gotten a layup. Probably would have beaten the guy off the dribble and gotten a layup. The biggest irony of it. So the first memory we have of Trevor Cooney, guys, was in the Final Four. Syracuse down 3, and he goes barreling into the lane and turns it over. With 5 seconds left, and when they needed a 3, and he tries to get a 2.
Right.
The most recent memory we have of Trevor Cooney is they're down 1. They need a 2-pointer, and he takes a 3.
Yeah, and of course doesn't convert on any of the shots. So, do you think going forward into this tournament, into the Dayton game, that we're going to see Cooney play more like 28 to 32 minutes instead of 38 to 40, and you'll see Franklin Howard play more minutes?
I think that depends on the first 10 minutes of the game. Boeheim's very loyal to his seniors most of the time, and Cooney comes in, he's shooting well. I think you go with him, and if he's shooting well, obviously you got to keep him in.
Yeah.
But if the doesn't really matter until he goes out in that first 10 minutes and sees if he goes out and he misses his first couple shots, I think Boeheim gets him right out of there. I do.
I hope he does, because that's what I would recommend doing with Trevor Cooney all year long. Put him in. If he, is 0 for 2 or 0 for 3, see you later. We'll try you again a little later, but, come sit next to me because I'm going to let Franklin Howard play. And if he'd done that more throughout the year, Frank Howard would be more ready to play right now in the postseason. But with that being said, I can't see any way that Syracuse wins the NCAA tournament unless Trevor Cooney makes a lot of 3-pointers, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah.
Even if Cooney comes in, he gets real hot, I don't see him winning the NCAA tournament, But they're going to need him to play well to win 2-3 games. No doubt about it.
What do you think the recipe for Syracuse success in the NCAA tournament is, Brad?
I think we got to ride Benajay as long as we'll possibly take it. He's a guy. He tried to put that team on his shoulders against Pitt, and he almost got it done. I mean, he was tremendous in that game, and I think he's got to continue to be that guy. I would love to see him be able to come off the ball and see Frank Howard have more touches at point, and that way, you can get Benajay running off screens. You can get him posting guys up that are smaller than him. I think he can beat you in a lot of ways. I think Benajay's got to be great in this tournament. And I think Malachi Richardson has to really, really be a focus of the offense too. I don't think you need Cooney to be great, but I think you need Benajay and Richardson to stand out, and I think both have that potential.
Yeah, yep. I mean, we do have potential. That's the thing, and you got NBA players in Benajay and Richardson for sure, right? And then you got your wild card in Cooney. You got another wild card in Frank Howard, I think.
I think you need Tyler Lydon to hit some shots to open up the defense a little bit. I think that would be
don't
important.
forget about Lydon. Maybe 3 NBA
three-point
players.
threat than Trevor Cooney is.
Yeah.
I think you'd love to see Tyler Lydon hit 3 or 4 threes a game.
Yeah, and then it comes down to our big guys, Coleman and Roberson. Hopefully they can, hopefully it's the same Roberson we saw against Duke. But we've yet to see Tyler Roberson really have a game like that against a good rebounding team, a more physical team than this year's Duke team is inside.
Yeah, how long have we been saying we need to see the Tyler Roberson we saw against Duke? I tend to believe that was the aberration. That was the exception rather than the rule, unfortunately. I'd like to see more of Dajuan Coleman hit a double-double against Pitt. I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, that's true. It's not just Roberson. Coleman's shown flashes too. So, you never know with Boeheim's teams coming into the NCAA tournament. I'm not going to count them out. I can see him beating Dayton, obviously, right? I almost like coming into Dayton as more of an underdog than a favorite like we were 2 years ago. And then after that, it's Michigan State. And, Michigan State's awesome and all, but there's no saying Syracuse can't beat anybody, right?
Well, I go to Vegas a lot for the NCAA tournament. Jim, you know that. I haven't been there in the last 2 years. And the reason I go is not only to visit my brother who lives out there, but, we like to sit in the
prostitutes.
No, not because of the prostitutes, but we like to sit in this sports book and, put a little money on these games. And if I'm looking at Syracuse right now, that's a team I kind of like with the numbers. I don't know if they'll be favored or I don't think they'll be an underdog. They're an underdog in the seed, but they'll be favored by 2-3 points, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And then going in, if they can win against Dayton, that means some things went well for them. The zone slows down everybody. I'd love to bet Syracuse in that second game against Michigan State because Michigan State be favored by probably 6 or 7 points. Not that Michigan State may not beat them by that, but that zone could, the zone always creates problems for teams in the tournament.
Yeah, we're stepping out of conference now.
It always is the reason why they exit earlier than they should, too, if somebody gets hot. And we've seen that over the years as well. I'm real curious for somebody to ask the committee why these guys are playing. Syracuse was out last year with a self-imposed ban, which I hate, but they were out. And I believe the year before they lost to Dayton as a big favorite, Yeah. And, Dayton's got a great guard in Scoochie Davis, but he's not much of a three-point shooter. He's going to have to slash and get by it. But, I kind of compare him, not as much score, but a Cat Barber. And Cat Barber struggled against that zone, in NC State. So, that's a great matchup. And if I wouldn't be surprised if Dayton beats them, and I wouldn't be too shocked if they knock off Michigan State.
And let's say they did. Let's just say they did because things happen. And Syracuse has had pretty good success against Michigan State historically. But then who you got? Seton Hall, Gonzaga, Utah, Fresno State? Bring it on. If we get that far, bring on any one of those four. And I'll tell you what, if we get beyond that to the Elite Eight, you're talking about Virginia, which let's hope, I would hope Virginia will get knocked off. I don't really want to play Virginia, but give me Texas Tech or Purdue or Butler or Iowa State even. Bring them all on. There's nobody on there that's, if we can beat that Michigan State team in the second round.
Well, yeah, Michigan State is a 2. They should be a 1. Virginia should be the 2. Not sure about that one. I think that's another hoax here. Michigan State wins the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten's better than the ACC, and I'm an ACC fan. I don't get it, but Syracuse is playing a 1 seed, and you're looking way beyond in that bracket. There's a lot of teams that are bad matchup for Syracuse in there, even though they don't have the big names. But that Utah team, if they advance, they would do a good job against that zone. Seton Hall's got some good guards. So, Virginia, they do, I think, really well against the zone.
I don't want to play with Virginia. That's the one team in this whole bracket that I would be most concerned with, although we did give them somewhat of a challenge this year. Brad, how about the Midwest bracket for Syracuse? What are you thinking? Can we beat Michigan State? Will we beat Dayton?
Yeah, I think this team has a very, very solid chance of beating Dayton. Michigan State, to me, they're a strong Final Four, if not national championship contender. I see Michigan State coming out of the Midwest. Quite honestly, I think Denzel Valentine is fantastic, and I think that's going to be a very difficult matchup for this team. But if they do, then I like their chances. I mean, I think I would love to see a matchup against Seton Hall. We'd all love that game, all of us Big East fans from back in the day. If that matchup came to fruition, the UVA matchup, like you guys said, that's a tough one, and this team just struggles against UVA. I mean, they match up well against Syracuse. They can play the slow down game and bet the zone forces. That's a real tough matchup. I don't see the Syracuse team. Of course, I would give you $1 to put on Syracuse to go to the Final Four, but I don't think I would expect to get any money back on that bet.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the odds are. I don't know if they're even out there yet.
Yeah, no, they'll come out at some point in the next 24 hours. But I look at that. If Syracuse gets by Dayton, and that's a big if, because I like the A-10. I think Dayton's got a good team. They played this weekend with some injuries, and they're not very deep anymore. I'm a big fan of the A-10. So if they get by Dayton, I can't see Syracuse putting up more than 50, 55 points against Michigan State. Michigan State's tough.
That might be all they need, though.
It could be if Michigan State doesn't shoot well, but Michigan State's bringing tons of guys off the bench. They'll find guys to shoot against his own. And
look, Michigan State will win that game 7 to 10 times.
Yeah,
but there's those other 3 times.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at some of these other brackets here. Might as well go directly north from the Midwest here. As far as the brackets on myfingerlakes1.com, printable brackets. Notice all the white space for your office spool, even a spot there with name and email address. So you print these things off, and you're good to go. And
we're encouraging a lot of gambling tonight.
Well, this is for entertainment purposes only. Try your hand at predicting the field. Or get an ESPN's bracket where you can win $1 billion or whatever it is if you pick them all. Good luck with that.
Who's paying that bill? It's what's his name? He's out in the mid.
Warren Buffett.
Yeah, Warren Buffett. Thank you, Brad.
It really is impossible to do until you start getting hundreds of thousands of entries. Then all of a sudden, there's just some chance of somebody.
Yeah, but I think the last 4 years, nobody's made it through the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It's crazy.
It's impossible.
And if you're gonna win it, you got to be a huge fan of. Buffalo Bulls, who pull the upset. The people that get far, they pick these crazy teams nobody really ever pick.
Yeah. So in the East, everybody's trying to get to Philadelphia. North Carolina, the number 1 seed. Providence is in there as a 9 seed. That's a tough 9 seed. Indiana, Tom Crean bringing them back as the 5 seed. That Kentucky Stony Brook game, Kentucky a 4 seed. Notre Dame's in there from the ACC. West Virginia, our old Big East buddies are in there. Wisconsin and Pittsburgh, 2 teams that beat Syracuse. In that matchup alone, Syracuse was 0-4 this year against those 2 teams, Wisconsin and Pittsburgh. And Xavier and Weber State. And, I almost think like the committee puts Wisconsin and Pittsburgh together because it's an intriguing type of matchup that they admit that they do that.
No, they admit that they don't, and that's
it's obvious they do.
They talk about these things. Well, we don't do that. It just happens. You don't put Indiana and Kentucky as a 4 seed and Indiana as a 5.
Right.
Just admit that it is what it is. Yeah, we like a little drama. It's good for CBS. It's good for college basketball.
And the fans actually like it, too.
Yeah, when players go against coaches and all that stuff, it's great. But don't say that you don't do it, that it's just random that it happens. I listened to an interview yesterday. One of the guys on the board, he says, "Oh, we don't do that. And if it happens," and I said, "Well, you guys are nuts," because it's spread throughout this whole sheet.
Yeah, you could put anybody anywhere. So, Brad, what do you think about the East? Who you like coming out of the East here to play Syracuse in the Final Four?
I think Syracuse could end up with a third matchup against North Carolina. I like Carolina. Marcus Page is a senior. You love senior backcourt guys in this tournament, and to the extent that he can lead this team, I think they've got all the weapons, all the tools. Obviously, Roy Williams knows how to win in this tournament. I think their toughest matchup, honestly, will be against Kentucky in the Sweet 16. If that matchup comes to fruition, I think Kentucky gives them a lot of problems. Kentucky's lost some bad ones this year, but they've beaten some good teams, and they can give Carolina some fits. I like West Virginia coming out of the bottom of that bracket. They just defend you, and Huggins has had success in this tournament before. I don't think he's got the weapons to get past Carolina, but Huggins going against Xavier as a Cincinnati guy, that will be a fun matchup to watch. Xavier's got a lot of good parts. I think they're too young. I think they're not. Their backcourt is pretty young and not tournament tested. I think that'll be a challenge for them coming out of the East. So I like North Carolina. I think they've got everything they need. I don't think they're going to win it all, but I do think they're the class of that conference, which isn't really going on a limb since they're the 1 seed. But I like Marcus Page really leading that team.
I kind of like Notre Dame as a 6 seed, to be honest with you. It's a law of averages type of thing, right? Korzy, how about you?
I hate Notre Dame in that pick, but that's all right. One thing I want to bring up is the Big East, and they got Xavier here, and I think Xavier's a good team. I like Xavier's matchup. Wisconsin or Pittsburgh, it's a nice, favorable second game, so I think they advance. I'm not a Villanova all year. These Big East teams, we're going to see now. There's a lot of second round games where you're going to see the best team in maybe the American or Big East against a mid-level Big 10, Big 12, ACC, and I'll take those big-level or mid-level teams against the best in American and Big East, and that might be it. I like Xavier too. Brad, I agree with you. They're younger backcourt, but Wisconsin and Pitt, they haven't been playing great, so. That's a great matchup in that second round. Indiana, Kentucky's awesome, but I like Providence. USC's got Andy Enfield. Remember, he coached the Florida Gulf Coast a couple years ago, up and down. He likes that tempo. That USC team's young. They haven't done anything outside of their home gym. So I like Providence to win that game, and I like Providence to run up and down with Carolina in another close matchup. I think that's going to be a good game. And if Providence beats,
that'd be a fun game to watch.
It'd be a great game to watch.
And the tempo of that game will be real entertaining.
And I think Providence will be in the last 3-4 minutes. And if their star's playing well, he's good enough to take Carolina down. So that wouldn't surprise me very much. But obviously, Carolina is the class of this field. Kentucky's good. ACC not good. So I wouldn't be surprised if they lose to Indiana in that second round as well. They talk about the backcourt for Kentucky. Best backcourt they got going. Ulis is playing great. Murray's playing great. But I think Indiana's got one of the top point guards. And when you have a great point guard like Indiana does, Thomas Bryant played at Bishop Kearney for a little bit. He's playing great for Indiana. He should be on Syracuse. But I think Indiana can beat Kentucky, and I think they will beat them in that matchup. So Carolina's got to worry about Indiana, not Kentucky.
Yeah, fair enough. I can see North Carolina get it knocked off early and Roy Williams crying.
It would be great. Have you seen Chris Dunn from Providence play? Chris Dunn's the guard for Providence. It's awesome. And because Carolina doesn't defend anyone well, a guy like Chris Dunn gets hot, gets 20, 22 points, and they can keep it close because Carolina does that. They play to the level of their competition. Chris Dunn's the type of guy that could kill you in the last 2-3 minutes of an NCAA tournament game. I'd love to see that if they can get by USC.
So that's the East. Now that's the same bracket as Syracuse, and you should also let everybody know Syracuse plays at 12:15 p.m. on Friday. So that's Duke, lunchtime.
Duke, and my favorite. My teams I like to watch: Syracuse 12:15, Duke 12:15. I hate those 12:15 games.
On Thursday though, right? For
Thursday's
Duke,
Duke, Friday's Syracuse.
Yeah, so it'll be. Yeah, I don't like them either. I don't like.
I love them when I'm on vacation and watching them, but
I like to ease into it a little bit. I prefer the night games a little bit. I think Syracuse traditionally not great at noon. I think if you look at it historically, they're going to be in St. Louis,
which is close to Dayton. Dayton travels well, A10. You know, these things are big things to look at when you try to pick these. You know, Syracuse will Syracuse travel in St. Louis? They'll get some.
St. Louis isn't their biggest. Syracuse gets fans everywhere, but St. Louis isn't one of their bigger hotspots. If the game was in, at the Barclays Center, for instance.
Right. But quite frankly, if you're going to get a 10 seed, really Syracuse should be somewhere as far away from as possible. You know, sometimes you get that 12 seed and they reward you being home. They underseed you and put you close to home, or they say, okay, we're going to give you the good number, but you're going to go somewhere far away.
Yeah, I agree.
So
kicking it over to the other side of the bracket into the South region. Let's start up top here. Number 1 seed Kansas. Then you got the 8-9 with UConn in there against Colorado. Maryland, South Dakota, California, Hawaii, Arizona against the winner of Vanderbilt and Wichita State. Miami against Buffalo, the Bulls, New York's other college team, and Iowa and Temple, and Nova against Asheville. This is a fun bracket. And first of all, Korzy, what do you think about New York's other college team, the Buffalo Bills? Will they go farther in this tournament than Syracuse?
That's a great question. They have just as good a chance as going. You know, they go against Miami. I love Jim Larinaga. He's probably one of my top 7-8 favorite coaches in this field. They slow it down, kind of play like Virginia, athletic, big. You know, he made the run with George Mason, 7-8 years ago when they were the 12 seed, went to the Final Four. I love that guy. I think he's one of the best coaches around. Players love him. They love playing for him. So I think that's a tough matchup for Buffalo. Obviously, Bobby Hurley effect is still there. You know, he really did a good job of bringing some good recruits in. They have a sophomore guard that's outstanding, which was left over from one of his recruiting classes. He probably still wishes he was in Buffalo. He's out with Arizona State now and not in the tournament. But, no, I don't think Buffalo beats Miami. I think Miami advances and plays in what could be Arizona. They've been up and down, but no chance for Buffalo there.
How about you, Brad? Any surprises in the South region?
I'm not willing to pick it, but I think the first one to lose could be Kansas against UConn. The run that UConn just came off of, and we see what that program has done recently with postseason runs. You know, that's a team that's sort of on borrowed time a little bit. They hit that shot against Cincinnati in the 4 overtime game on Friday, and then they ran roughshod over the rest of the American this weekend. I see them continuing to play at a high level. Is it good enough to beat Kansas? Maybe not, but if there's any number 1 seed that's vulnerable in getting the Sweet 16, to me it's Kansas, only if it's a matchup against UConn, a really hot UConn team.
Brad, we're going to have to put a little side bet on that one because I think Colorado, the Pac-12 was overseeded a little bit, but I think Colorado knocks off UConn in that game, and UConn doesn't even make it. UConn had a great run. I don't think they have the point guard play that they've had in years past. I know they did great in the tournament, and they beat everybody, and they played good against Memphis today. But I think it slows down for them a little bit. They get back to a little bit of reality, and Colorado wins in a real close game. It's an 8-9 seed. Anybody can win that game, but
well, it's East Coast versus West Coast. Where's the better basketball?
That's
the American. I'll probably pick UConn.
American, and that's fine. But that American, what is the identity of the American Conference?
I know, it's terrible.
They go down, they play in Orlando.
UConn basketball would rather be in the Big East right now.
Nobody shows up to the game because UConn fans, they're not even supposed to be in. They hit the 3-quarter court shot, which is the greatest shot of the weekend. But, it was awesome. But that was against Cincy, right, Brad?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so, he hits that shot. They go on. They play great. And I love the story. But none of the UConn fans were even there because they didn't think they were going to, let's see if they win this, and then we'll go to the NCAA tournament and follow them. So, it's a great story for UConn, but they come back down to earth, I think. And, I know that American Conference is really tough, but
it's tough.
Hope they got in.
Tulsa, Houston, Memphis,
SMU,
UConn.
SMU.
Yeah, SMU. I mean, it's all over the place. These teams are from Texas to Connecticut. I hate
all
that
because of
conference.
football. That conference exists because of football money.
It's the land of misfit toys, is what it is.
They're the rejects. Yeah. Every team in that conference wants to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I feel bad for those guys, but that's why I'm picking against them. Man, I hate UConn. So.
Yeah, I don't like UConn either. I'm looking at this bracket though, and I'm wondering if it isn't time for Villanova to make a run. All the way through there. It seems to be set up pretty good, and of course, here's another example. They set up a potential all Philadelphia matchup in the second round against Temple. What do they call it? Not the Big Five.
No,
hit the Palestra.
They used to play, all these 5 teams used to play against each other out of Philly, and
they still do. They
haven't done it in the last year or two. I forget. Something Big Five. I think it's the Big Five.
It might be the Big Five.
Big Five, I think they call it.
Yeah, Big Five.
They don't do that anymore. Another reason why I think these guys are matched up. Certainly Temple could beat Iowa. 3 weeks ago, I had Iowa as one of my not a sleeper because they were doing well. They've kind of fallen apart in the Big Ten. Everybody's saying that they'll get it back together because teams will know how to guard them and all this stuff. But Iowa's just, they're good. I mean, Peter Jack is one of my favorite players in the country. You can fill it up. I think it's an Iowa-Nova matchup. And, Nova's got to do what everybody else has done against Iowa and play some defense on a couple guys and see if other guys can hurt you. But I see Nova maybe going to the Sweet 16 for the first time in a long time, and they get that monkey off their back.
And upset special for me in this bracket, South Dakota State over Maryland.
Yeah.
I'm filling that in my bracket. And, when you can't pick a bracket without picking a few of these, double-digit seed winning,
Right.
Because it happens every week or every year. You just don't know who it's going to be. What about a 16 seed beating a 1 seed this year? You see any chance of that happening anywhere?
I always look at that, and I didn't see it anywhere. But of course, look, no, we're going to be biased against Oregon because we don't see them play.
Right.
The championship games at 10. They get up and down, and they can really fill it up. I don't see it there. Carolina's not going to go down. Virginia, no way.
Hampton.
Senior-oriented team. But Hampton right by Virginia. I mean, they got a lot to play for. But it doesn't happen, It's so hard. In that one thing, that Vanderbilt Wichita State game. If you remember Wichita State, you've watched them over the last few years. Van Vliet and Baker, I think one of the best backcourts in the country. I love those two guys. They've won a lot of NCAA tournaments. Look for that team to, if they can get hot, beat Vandy, and then go in with the Arizona game. Arizona's up and down. So I'm just excited. I'm a big Shocker fan. I like those two guys in the backcourt. They're good players.
Yeah, that leaves the West, where Oregon's the number 1 seed, like we were just talking about. You got St. Joe's against Cincy in there. Baylor against Yale for the first time since like the 1960s. Yale's in there. And they get Baylor. Corsi's Dukies against UNC Wilmington, another little manufactured matchup with a little rivalry there, I guess, locally. Texas Northern Iowa, which, a 12-loss Texas team getting in there is a 6 seed, I believe. And they got Northern Iowa. Texas A&M and Green Bay, Oregon State and VCU. When I found out about the league brackets were right after they announced the West teams. And when they announced that Oregon State and VCU were in, I really felt like Syracuse was getting in. I couldn't see either one of those teams getting in ahead of Syracuse.
I think that's the same bracket, and he didn't say it, that Boeheim was referring to when he said, when a couple other teams, and I was texting some people too, and when I saw both those teams matched up against each other, I thought to myself, I can't believe Oregon State's in, and they're a 7 seed.
Yeah.
And VCU's a 10 seed. And like I said, I told you before, I'm an A-10 fan, so not surprised that VCU's in. But was just surprised with Oregon State, 19 wins as a 7 seed. I mean, that's how weak, I don't want to say weak, but that's the parity of college basketball this year. They showed the number of the 1 seeds. Worst, most losses by 1 seeds combined in a long time. I think 13 years or something.
I think you could say weak. Sure, it's weaker than it has been in the past.
Yeah, the one and dones probably make it real weak.
Yeah, it just dilutes it a lot. If the big schools are losing the top players after 1 or 2 years, it's naturally gonna lessen the gap between the rest of the country.
I think Duke's a perfect example. They're 23-10. I'm a fan, but they stink so bad at times. You know, a perfect example is the Notre Dame game the other day. And you know, Luke Kennard's in there playing. He's 3 for 17, and Krzyzewski doesn't even take him out because he doesn't have confidence in the other guys who I think should be in. But this Duke team, I hope they can beat the Colonials, you know, or the UNC Wilmington. You know, they beat that team. Then Texas, Northern Iowa. I don't know. It's going to be, you know, if Duke makes the Sweet 16, I'll be the happiest guy in the world. Actually, it's Baylor, Yale, sorry. But, you know, so Duke, as good as they were last year, lost 3 players. Tyus Jones, I never thought would leave for the NBA, probably regretting his decision. You know, and then, you know, and then.
Syracuse is another example of it. We're supposed to have Tyler Ennis and Jeremy Grant right now, you know? I mean, instead we're Ben and Jay's running the point, and we're just grooming Frank Howard now, and we, you know, we're weak inside. You know,
and if those guys stay, then these other talents go elsewhere. You know, Kentucky's not reloading like this all the time. Duke's not reloading like this all the time because, Tyus Jones there. He's going to be there for 3-4 years. I don't want to go there. So I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go to Syracuse. I'm going to go somewhere I can play.
Yeah, and Syracuse lost, you know, some recruits because of how stocked the cupboard was. But then the other problem is that I think that Syracuse recruits got, knowing that they're going to have some one-and-dones here and there, and maybe even thinking Jeremy Grant might have been one of them, although it would have been hard to predict. I know they didn't think Ennis was. But let's bring in some guys that we know are going to be here for a while that we can groom, guys like B.J. Johnson and Ron Patterson. And then when those guys don't work out, now we're screwed. You know, those guys transferred. And so, when Boeheim says he plays Cooney because there's nobody better behind him, it's tough not to argue with that, except for Frank Howard.
In some ways, he's created that situation, though, because he doesn't develop these guys, because he doesn't play them, because he has no confidence in them, and he has no tolerance to let them build up the confidence. And you never saw B.J. Johnson or Ron Patterson get into a flow, and this season you've never seen it with Caleb Joseph. He could have been a capable player, 3 or 4 year guy, but he'll be gone after this year. I can't imagine he's going to stick around.
So we're losing him at the top, and we're losing him at the bottom. There's not going to be anybody left. We're going to get all our guys.
Tyler Lydon's a great guy, 4-year guy.
You think 4 years? Yeah, because he started popping up on draft.
Did he really?
Yeah, can you believe that?
No, because I think he'll get pushed around. You know,
no way is he ready.
Like, just take a look at what Frank Kaminsky's. He's struggling in the NBA this year, and he's bigger than Lydon. Yep. But they're the same player, really. I think Lydon's a 4-year player.
I hope so, because he could be great for, you know, he could be
a great
college
player.
Hall of Fame type player.
You're really stretching it with that one, but.
Yeah, no, I was shocked too. It was after the battle for Atlantis. All of a sudden, you see Tyler Lydon show up as, you know, on the NBA.net and stuff like that. You know, and they weren't even saying this year; they were saying next year. He pops in, and next year is like a late first-round pick.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, you know, looking at the West here, up here in the Northeast, I bet you hardly anybody has Oregon going anywhere. You know, coming out of there.
Yeah, if you're in your office pool, I'm telling you right now, take Oregon because nobody else will. Because you live in Big East country. You're not a West Coast fan, but they have thrashed some really good teams. They're fun to watch if you get a chance to watch them. I'm not sure what time they play. You know, Brad's looking at it because he's a big Cincy fan, right? And how do you feel about Cincy St. Joe's, Brad?
I don't think Cincinnati's got this consistent enough offense. I think St. Joe's is solid. I like what they've done, and Cincinnati, they're just up and down, and they can put it together, but it's not a team that can generate offense when they need it. They defend you like any Cincinnati team does, but they don't have the ability to go far. I don't see them getting past St. Joe's because I just don't see that. You know, it'll be a 54-51 game, and it may happen, but I don't like their chances to go very far.
And we talk about gaming up the brackets. How about the old Texas A&M potential second round matchup? I mean, you know, come on. It's obvious.
First thought I had when I saw that is they manufactured that one for sure. When Texas A&M is in the SEC, they want those teams to play. There'll be a lot of visibility to that game.
And one game you might not want to watch is Texas Northern Iowa. First one to 50 is going to win. Shaka Smart. I'm real interested in see how that is because they got rid of Barnes. Because he doesn't do anything in the tournament.
Yep.
He makes tournament, but he doesn't do anything with it. So a lot of pressure on Shaka Smart in his first year. Big fan of him. Northern Iowa, I think, is a great team, but defensive-oriented. So it's really going to be a lockdown game, low scoring. But, Texas A&M, Texas. I mean, that's pretty cool. Texas Tech, another Texas team in there I don't think should have been in. But
or even Oregon and Oregon State being in the same, region here is, you got two schools from Oregon.
Right. Yeah.
And then Oklahoma down at the bottom at 2, I think they're going to probably be who I write in for the Final Four representative out of the West.
Yeah, they're a team that I love watching play too. A lot of seniors. Obviously, they got Buddy Hield, but they shoot a lot of threes, man. And if Duke's a team like Oklahoma, if you have an off night, VCU's going to beat you. If you have an off night, you're going to lose to somebody. I mean, I've watched Duke go down to some teams they should never have lost to in the last, over the last 10 years when they have early exits. It's because they, struggle to hit 5 or 6 threes and they shoot 35, 40. So Oklahoma, I like them. Lon Kruger, big fan. But VCU, Oregon State advances. I like Oklahoma. VCU advances. Another tough defensive team. That'll be a great game. And, we can sit here and pick all these teams, but you got to get a little lucky and you got to get hot.
Yeah.
Oklahoma gets hot, they'll go right to the Final Four.
So, who do you like out of the West, Brad?
I like Oklahoma. I think they've got, you love to see teams that have a horse you can ride, and Oklahoma definitely has that. A guy that's averaging 25 plus a game. That's a guy that can put you over the top in a tight spot. I mean, he almost did it, the other night. Almost hit the game-winning shot in the Big 12 tournament. Just out of nowhere kind of shot. I like them in Oregon in the Elite Eight, and that's going to be a fun game to watch. I just like Oklahoma coming out of it. Oklahoma Texas in the Sweet 16 could be a fun game if that happens, or even Oklahoma and A&M. I don't like Duke going very far. Like Course said, they live and die with the 3, and they could have an off shooting night, and they could go in the first round, or they could make it all the way to the Elite Eight. I don't see them with enough Final Four talent, but they, if you live and die with it, you've got the ability to ride the hot hand for a long time, or you got the ability to shoot yourself right out of it in the first round. So there'd be a tough pick to see coming out of there.
The one thing I liked about it,
I do like Oklahoma.
The Baylor zone with Duke, they might be able to attack that zone with the shooting. But Grayson Allen gets 28, trips somebody, win one game, and see what happens against Baylor. I'd be very happy if, as a Duke fan, they make it to the Sweet 16 this year.
And let's face it, any bracket, any matchup in this first round other than the 116 is a legitimate chance there could be an upset. Anybody could win. And we've seen it before. That's why they call it March Madness. And it's just another reason to have a little hope for Syracuse. So we're coming up here on getting close to time to shut it down. Let's officially, I want to know how far Syracuse is going to go. And I'll go first.
Over under.
Yeah, over under.
Let's
what
go
round?
over under 2 games.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is I think if they go 2 games, that they can go 4 games. I don't think they get beyond. I think they can get to the Final Four, and they just don't seem like a team that once they get to that far could do it. I think that's best case scenario is Final Four. But then again, the other side, you get to the Final Four, and with a team like Syracuse, 1 or 2 of those guys gets hot, and they can advance even further. But over under 2, the smart money would be under. But if they can get over, then look out. It could be 1996 all over again. Over under 2, Brad.
Under.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. You agree with me though that if they get by 2, or no, if they get by 2, are they out in 3?
Yeah. I mean, every game stands on its own, right? I don't think this team. I don't think this is a team where you're like, wow, these guys are playing out of their minds, and I see a 6, 7, 8 game run out of this team. I think with the style that they play, each game is predicated on matchups. This team matches up well against some teams and poorly against others, and it's not that they're hot and they get a bunch of hot guys. It's you've got a better opportunity to beat this team with your style of play than that team, and each game as you go through this tournament, the zone is going to affect some teams more than it's going to affect others. I think they can give Dayton fits with it. Michigan State, I don't have as much confidence with. They get to play UVA. We know how that matchup works against Syracuse's favor. So I don't see this as a team that rides a hot hand like we saw in '96 with John Wallace, and like we saw in '03 with that zone that was just stifling, or in '13 rather, and obviously in '03 with riding Carmelo and McNamara shooting. I don't see this as that style team.
No, I don't either. But I see it as a team that can beat anybody you put in front of them on any given day. It's just, can they do it 6 times in a row? That's where I would say no. But
over under 2?
Yeah.
No, under. And I'm going to tell you exactly how it's going to play out. And this is why Syracuse at times does bad.
Okay.
Mid-major teams tend to shoot the ball a little bit better than power conference teams. And you might say, what the hell are you talking about? He's crazy. But they're not as athletic. They're not as high-round picks. But they tend to be decent shooters at 3 or 4 spots rather than 1 or 2 spots. Mid-major teams do, because they, you get the great players that don't even look at their school, so they got to find ways to do other things. But with that being said, and the fact that Archie Miller thrashed this zone 2 years ago, Syracuse is going to be in one of those games where you don't know if they're going to win, and they're going to pull it out against Dayton in a low-scoring game, and you're going to be screaming at the TV, and they advance. Then you're going to be feeling, well, I don't know what's going to happen against Michigan State. They're going to linger in the first half, but they're going to lose by 6 points. And then you're going to, Jim, walk around and say, we had Michigan State, we had them. In all actuality, they keep it close against Michigan State but lose. So I do see them win one game, but then Michigan State takes care of business in a good game. In a good game that will, at the end of it, you'll say as a Syracuse fan, glad they made it, glad they beat Dayton, and man, we almost beat Michigan State, who's in the Final Four and possibly the championship game, because I love Tom Izzo. I love this Michigan State team, and I see them going pretty far in this.
Well, then let's kick it to the next question. Who's going to win the tournament? You got 68 teams here.
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is a 5-seed or higher is going to make the Final Four, and I just feel that because there's
Which one?
Yeah, it's the greatest question. I'll answer it at the end. But I'll pick somebody on a whim. But I just see it this year as the 1s aren't great, the 2s aren't as good as the 1s, and some, somebody's going to get hot. A team that you look at and say, oh man, they played terrible the last couple weeks of the season, like Syracuse, who lost 5 out of 6, Io, who lost out a lot of games towards the end. There's a lot of teams that fumble towards the end. One of those teams is going to get hot, and they're going to beat somebody big because the bigs aren't great. The Kansas, I think. Unlike Brad, I think they got a great chance of going. I love Michigan State as a 2 and Carolina as a 1. If Carolina lost in the second round, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Usually you look at this and say, man, this team's going to do really good, and everybody's got them. Your office bracket is going to be wide open this year. But the team that cuts down the net is going to be Michigan State.
Okay. Syracuse's potential second-round opponent.
Sorry about that, Jim.
Yeah, no, hey, Valentine's is a type of player that can. And
I like Kansas as a
team.
1 seed to get to the Final Four. I don't like Carolina to get to the Final Four, even though people have been talking about how great they are and this and that. I do love Marcus Page, and obviously Bryce Johnson's great, but they're susceptible, and I think Roy Williams is as overrated a coach as it comes in Division I. So I don't see that. But I'll let Brad get his pick, and I'll come back with my 5 or better seed that makes the Final Four.
All right, Brad. So who do you have to win it all? Don't say Pittsburgh.
Don't say Pittsburgh.
I know you probably got Pittsburgh because they
usually. As much as it doesn't add to the flavor of the variety of the show, I go exactly with Korzy. I go with Michigan State. I had them written down before the show started. I just think Tom Izzo is probably the best tournament coach in this tournament, and I realize he doesn't have as many championships as a guy like Krzyzewski or even Roy Williams. But he does more with less in this tournament, and now he's actually got the horses. And, I mean, we weeks, and he's got a national championship under his belt already. I think he can get it done with this group again. He's got one of the best players in the field, if not the best player in the field on his roster, which he's not had in the past since was it 2000, I think, when they won with Mateen Cleese in that group. I think they're the class of this tournament. I think they beat Oklahoma in the finals. A great game. Denzel Valentine and Buddy Hield going head-to-head in the finals. I love that game if that happens. But I like Michigan State.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a little bit of a different take on things. I'm going with Virginia. Like I said, they're the one team that I hope Syracuse doesn't have to play. And I think they got other than Michigan State, potentially fairly relatively to the other number one seeds, I think they got the easiest path. And they have the experience. They just won their conference tournament. And I think they got as good a chance as anybody. I have more confidence in picking a Virginia to get there than I do a North Carolina or an Oregon. I almost like Texas A&M and Oklahoma better in the West than Oregon and Kansas is obviously a solid pick. You'll see tons of people writing Kansas in there on the one line and getting them right through. But I think on my master bracket, I'm going to probably take Virginia. So
yeah, I like your
Virginia.
pick.
I was tempted to take them, especially against Michigan State. I feel like last year was their year. I feel like they had a better club last year.
Yeah.
They couldn't get it done last year, and this year they're just a step below where they were a year ago.
But Brogdon's a year older.
That's going to hurt them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think they were better last year, but I think it's a weaker field. I looked at that. I told you about that 5 seed. Looking at that.
Yeah, who you got?
Well, Arizona's a good 5 seed. I like them. I don't see them really getting past Kansas, although they could. And the funny thing is I got Purdue beating Virginia as that 5 seed. Purdue in the Final Four, Jim. Mark it down now.
Yeah,
Their front court's real formidable. They're big. Big Ten, played Michigan State great today. Very similar to Virginia in the fact that they lost to a great team in their conference final.
The Boilermakers. So, hey, we could have been sitting here tonight talking about who we were playing in the NIT, and this would have been the last episode of the podcast, and we'd be talking about next year. But hey, it all starts anew. For the last 2 months, everything that we've been doing as Syracuse fans has been wondering if we're going to be in or out. Are we on the bubble now? Are we off the bubble? Every game it changed. That's all behind us. Now we're in, just like these other 67 teams. I think if you rank these teams 68-1, we probably come in somewhere in the low 30s, maybe a little higher. And I think anybody in the top 35 could win it. Any of the top 35 teams in this tournament could win it.
I agree. I was watching, I think it was CBS, because I was flipping back and forth between CBS and ESPN, but, they said, you can't count on your fingers and toes how many teams can win it. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I don't know about 35, but I agree that there's 15 to 20 teams, and you'll see as the tournament goes, that could win it because the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds aren't great, Yeah,
it's the nature of college basketball nowadays. It's not as good a product at the top.
You could see just like a Chris Dunn from Providence. He's a senior. He's got the ability to take over games. He could will Providence to 3-4 wins and go to the Final Four.
Yep, or lose to USC.
Or
get
bounced out to the Trojans.
That's the crazy part of it. But hey, Brad, thanks for calling in tonight, and we'll see what we're talking about next week. It may be next week's either our last episode or the beginning of something really special.
Let's hope this is the first of many here in the month of March.
And Korzy, thanks for coming down the road, coming up here, having a couple beers, and talking some hoops. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, sorry. I appreciate coming down, and I always love talking March Madness. It's my favorite thing in the whole wide world.
So, Cuse Nation, get ready for it. Here it comes Thursday, Friday, bright and early, 12:15. Get off of work now and make your plans.
Office production going to be like in the area? Not very good, right?
Probably not.
A lot of Cuse fans.
A lot of bandwidth being used up streaming.
Yeah, for sure.
But thanks, everybody, for spending some time with us here on the Upstate Orange Podcast Special Selection Sunday edition. I'm Jim Sinicropi for Kevin Korzeniewski and the Professor, Brad Conner. Have a good night. Enjoy the tournament. Fill out those brackets, and let's go Orange.